Chapter 3. She's sitting at the table when I come in. She is so deaf that my call doesn't rouse her, and when she sees me, she is startled. Oh, she says. The sound is short and dry, as if she has no energy left. She begins to stand, but falters, and her hands, outstretched to greet me, fall to the table. She says my name as a question. Omi-san? I remove my muddy shoes and put on the slippers at the door before stepping in. Oba, I say loudly and take her hands. My aunt is not one for hugs and kisses. She peers into my face. Oh, she says again. I nod in reply. Her head is tilted to the side, as if it's all too heavy inside, and her lower jaw moves from side to side. I open my mouth to ask, did he suffer very much? But loud talking feels obscene. Everyone dies some day, she says eventually. Her voice is barely audible. She turns aside, pivoting in shuffles, and goes to the stove, picking up the large aluminum kettle with both hands. It's been made heavy over the years by the mineral deposits from the hard water. She twists the knob, and the gas flame flares blue and red. I hang my jacket on a coat peg, and then sit on a stool beside the table. Uncle's spot. The house is in its usual clutter. Nothing at all has changed. The applewood table is covered with a piece of discolored plastic over the blue and white tablecloth. Along one edge are Uncle's African violets, profusely purple, glass salt and pepper shakers, a soy sauce bottle, a cracked radio, an old-fashioned toaster, a small bottle full of toothpicks. She pours the tea. Tiny twigs and bits of rice puffs circle in the cups. Thank you, I say loudly, lifting the cup in both hands and nodding my head in thanks. Her eyes are unclear and sticky with a gum-like mucus. She told me years ago that her tear ducts were clogged. In all this time, I've never seen her cry. She takes a fold of toilet paper from her sleeve and rubs her lips, which are flaked with dry skin. Her mouth is plaqued with a gummy saliva, and she drinks the tea to loosen her tongue, sticking to the roof of her false plate. We sit in silence, sipping and turning the cups around on the tips of our fingers. Behind her on the counter is a black loaf of Uncle's stone bread, hefty as a rock. It's too big to be a bun, but much smaller than the regular store-bought bread. The fact that it's uncovered means that it was either yesterday or today. Was making this bread Uncle's last act? I can remember the first time he attempted baking. It must have been around 1946 or 47, when I was about 10 years old, shortly after we came to southern Alberta. The fat woman in the Granton General Store was giving everyone handwritten recipes for bread with every purchase of flour that day. I begged Obasan to let me try. In the end, it was Uncle who made it. Buredo, Uncle said as he pulled it from the oven. Try. Good. How can you eat that stone? I asked, poking it. It'll break your teeth. Shall I get the axe? Stone buredo, oishi, Uncle said. Taste very good. He carved off a piece and held it out to me. Here, my brother Stefan said. Stefan, 3 years older than me, was always ordering me around. He plopped a spoonful of hard, hand-yellowed margarine onto the slab. He called margarine Alberta, since Uncle pronounced Alberta Arubata, which in our Japanese English means the butter that there is. Try some Alberta on it. No, thank you, I said irritably. Uncle baked the bread too long. I refused to eat it, but Uncle kept making it that way over the years, improving the recipe with leftover oatmeal and barley. Sometimes he even added carrots and potatoes. No matter what he put in it, it always ended up like a lump of granite on the counter. When Obasan eats it, she breaks her slice into tiny pieces and soaks them in homemade weed tea. The weedy tea, as Stefan and I name it, was better on cold rice with salted pickles, especially late at night. Once I took the stone bread in my fists and tried to break it in half, but I couldn't. If you can't even break it, it's not bread, I said. It's all stone. That's not how, Stefan said. He speared the loaf with a sharp knife point and handed me a clump. Matches your complexion. What? Bristleface. Stefan was an early beginner when it came to hair on his face. He was the first boy in his class to shave. With Uncle gone, now there will be no more black bread and black bread jokes. Obasan is rolling a bit of dried up jam off the plastic tablecloth as she sips her tea. When she speaks, her voice is barely a whisper. Uncle, she says, woke up this morning and called her, but she couldn't hear what he had said. There was no knowing, she says. She did not understand what was happening. The nurses at the hospital also did not understand. They stuck tubes into his wrists like grafting on a tree. But death won against the medical artistry. She wanted to stay beside him there, but again, there was no knowing. The nurses sent her home. The last she saw of him, his head was rolling backwards, and he was looking at the ceiling through the whites of his eyes. What, I wonder, was Uncle thinking those last few hours? Had the world turned upside down? Perhaps everything was reversing rapidly, and he was tunneling backwards, top to bottom. His feet in an upstairs attic of hummus and memory, his hands groping down through the cracks and walls to the damp cellar, to the water, down to the underground sea. Or back to his fishing boats in BC and the skiffs moored along the shore. In the end, did he manage to swim full circle back to that other shore and his mother's arms, her round moon face glowing down at her firstborn? Nen nen, korori, lullaby, lullaby. Uncle was a child of the waves. Was he rocked to sleep again by the lap of the sea? Obasan taps her wrist with her thumb. Here, she says, medicine was put in, but oso kata. It was too late. She leans her head back to look up at me, and her cheeks sink into the cavity of her mouth, making her face resemble a skull. The pulse is a steady ripple in her wrinkled neck. Such an old woman she is. She opens her mouth to say more, but there is no further sound from her dry lips. The language of her grief is silence. She has learned it well, its idioms, its nuances. Over the years, silence within her small body has grown large and powerful. What will she do now, I wonder? What choices does she have? My brother will be of little help. Stefan, unable to bear the density of her inner retreat and the rebuke he felt in her silences, fled to the ends of the earth. From London, he went to New York, to Montreal. Stefan has always been a ball of mercury, unpredictable in his moods and sudden rages. Departure for him is as necessary as breath. Obasan keeps his infrequent letters in her jewel box. Oba, are you all right? I ask as she struggles to stand up. I put my hands over hers, feeling the silky wax texture. Now old, she says, too old. She totters as she moves to the door and squats beside the boot tray, picking up my shoes, weighted by the heavy clay. Granton gumbo adheres like tar. It is late now, I say to her. Should you not rest? She is deaf of my concern and begins to gouge the black sticky mud wedged against the heel. Beside her on the shoe shelf are Uncle's boots and overshoes, scraped clean and ready for the next rain. She takes a sheet of newspaper from the pile that is kept beside the entrance, and the mud drops down in clumps. In a tin can are a blunt knife and screwdriver. Everything else is in its place. She is altogether at home here. Could she, I wonder, come to live with me? I cannot imagine her more comfortable in any other house. This house, Obasan says as if she reads my mind. This body, everything old. The house is indeed old, as she is also old. Every homemade piece of furniture, every potholder and paper doily is a link in her lifeline. She has preserved in shelves, in cupboards, under beds, a box of marbles, half-filled coloring books, a red, white, and blue rubber ball. The items are endless. Every short stub pencil, every cornflakes box stuffed with paper bags and old letters is of her ordering. They rest in the corners like parts of her body, hair cells, skin tissues, tiny specks of memory. This house is now her blood and bones. Squatting here, with the putty knife in her hand, she is every old woman in every hamlet in the world. You see her on a street corner in a village in southern France, in a black dress and black stockings. or bent over the stone steps in a Mexican mountain village. Everywhere the old woman stands as the true and rightful owner of the earth. She is the bearer of keys to unknown doorways and to a network of astonishing tunnels. She is the possessor of life's infinite personal details. Now old, Obasan repeats, everything old. She pushes Uncle's overshoes to the side and places my shoes neatly beside them. Let us rest now, Obasan, I say once more. You must be tired. Mo ne masho.